Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Old Joe. I've been watching episodes of the NBC series Search. Episode 4, titled Moon Rock, originally aired on October 4th, 1972. If you like my content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. I wouldn't have been able to tell you what this episode was about before re-watching it, but unlike the last episode, watching this one brought back a few memories of seeing it as a 13-year-old 50 years ago. Join me now as I dive deep into Moon Rock, Episode 4 of Search. Beware, spoilers do lie ahead. We open the show with our probe of the week attending a briefing with VCR Cameron and the small team of expert technicians at Probe Control headquarters. The part of VCR Cameron is played by Burgess Meredith.
Burgess Meredith, born November 16, 1907, was well known for his portrayal of the bookworm in the first season episode of The Twilight Zone titled Time Enough at Last. He is probably best known for portraying the Penguin in the 1960s Batman TV series, as well as the movie by the same name. He was active in the film industry for more than 6 decades before his death at age 89 on September 9, 1997.
This week's rotating probe agent is Hugh O'Brian as Hugh Lockwood.
Hugh O'Brian, born April 19, 1925. The Emmy-nominated actor was best known for his starring role as the title character in the 1950s and 60s ABC Western The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. He died September 5, 2016.
The team is being briefed on a recent Apollo moon mission. Now you may wonder, what does a moon mission have to do with probe control? Well, that's what Lockwood and Cameron want to know. And to find that out, they need to access an information tape that demands its viewers have a special Code 10 clearance.
Code 10, absolute secrecy.
It seems that every World Securities mission involving Hugh Lockwood, at least so far, has been designated as Code 10. I wonder if that'll continue. I don't recall. If you've seen the pilot, Probe, or the first episode of Search, you already know that Code 10 means that only Cameron and the probe agent involved can be present. Gloria Harding was also given Code 10 clearance in Episode 1, but she's not present this week. Once the room is cleared and sealed, Cam and Lockwood begin to view the information on the tape. It explains that a very rare cluster of diamonds was discovered and brought back from the moon during the most recent Apollo mission. Before the tape ends, World Securities Director Dr. Barnett interrupts with a video conference call, as he seems to do every week. He sure knows exactly when to pop in. He must be monitoring the goings-on at Probe Control. Dr. Barnett is played, once again, by Ford Rainey, who is only sometimes credited as he is on this episode. Dr. Barnett informs Cam and Lockwood that the Moon Rock diamond cluster, designated by NASA as Lunar Sample D107, has gone missing. The rock was entrusted to World Securities to be delivered to the science lab at Palo Alto. It seems that World Securities is in deep doo-doo. Probe Unit 1, that's Lockwood, is under executive order to find the missing moon rock. We see Lockwood aboard a jet bound for San Francisco. A stewardess, And I know we're supposed to call them flight attendants now, but back then they were called stewardesses. So, a stewardess saunters up to Lockwood in a weird scene that serves no purpose or doesn't seem to move the plot along at all.
Champagne? I will if you want.
It involves some strange flirtation that seems totally out of place, especially by today's standards, and there's an awkward mention of chicken soup. This unnamed flirting stewardess is played by Dee Gardner.
Dee Gardner is an actress known for appearing on Mission Impossible, The April Fools, and A Day at the White House. She is noted for her blonde hair and sexy Jane Mansfield-type body. She has been married to actor Edward Gelb since 1971.
Next, Lockwood checks in with Probe Control. Cam informs Lockwood that Miss Gloria Harding is out with a cold, so she won't be monitoring him on this particular mission. But, not to worry, they have a replacement. Miss Anne Mulligan is Gloria's awkward cousin. At first, I thought the part of Miss Mulligan was being played by Paula Prentice. I remembered seeing her being quite awkward in much the same manner alongside Rock Hudson in the 1964 film Man's Favorite Sport. I discovered through a quick look at the credits that this actress is actually Paula's sister, Anne Prentice.
Anne Prentice was born November 27, 1939 in San Antonio, Texas. She was the younger sister of actress Paula Prentice, and she showed some of the same attractive charm on screen. Anne Prentice was active in the film industry, appearing in scores of television series throughout the 1960s and 70s. She spent the final years of her life in prison after trying to kill her father. She died January 12, 2010 in Los Angeles.
Lockwood says he needs to know who was the last person to set eyes on the lunar sample. To this, without even calling on Keach or Kuroda, Cam punches up a tape on Dr. Norman Van Owen. Dr. Van Owen is played by William Wintersole.
William Wintersole was born July 30, 1931. He performed in approximately 80 television series over his long career that began with an appearance on The Outer Limits in 1964. He appeared in Peyton Place, The Fugitive, The Wild Wild West, Star Trek, and Mod Squad in the 1960s. In the 1970s, William Wintersole could be seen in I Dream of Jeannie, McCloud, Mannix, Mission Impossible and The Partridge Family. Room 222, Gunsmoke, The Sixth Sense, Search, and Bonanza. The Streets of San Francisco, The Waltons, Police Story, Columbo, and Kojak. He was in 3 episodes of Emergency and General Hospital, and he appeared twice on Quincy. He also played minor roles in Trapper John M.D. and Airwolf and many other television shows and movies. His final role was as Mitchell Sherman on 82 episodes of The Young and the Restless in 2011. William Wintersole died in Los Angeles on November 5, 2019.
Lockwood is to be met at the Palo Alto facility by Dr. Trapnell. When Lockwood bumps into a woman as he's approaching the elevator, he's surprised to be greeted by Dr. Laura Trapnell, played by Joanne Flug.
Mr. Lockwood? Yes. I'm Dr. Trapnell.
Joanne Flug was born May 2, 1940 in Atlanta, Georgia. She was once married to Chuck Woolery. She has been married to Charles Stuck for more than 30 years. She was active, mostly in television, for more than 3 decades, appearing in bit parts as well as doing guest star appearances. She appeared in the movie MASH. Some of the television shows she appeared in were The Beverly Hillbillies, Marcus Welby MD, Search, McCloud, Alias Smith, and Jones. She appeared more than once on Love American Style, Quincy Emmy, Fantasy Island, and The Love Boat. She played herself on a 2-part episode of Chips. She played in episodes of Adam 12, The Dukes of Hazzard, Vegas, Charlie's Angels, One Day at a Time, Knight Rider. as well as Matt Houston. She was a regular on Operation Petticoat, The Fall Guy, and Ritual. Joanne Flug is 82 years old.
He tries to flirt with her. Those were the sexist 70s, remember? Ann Mulligan announces that they're both turned on. Cam says, let's erase that from the tape. If you ask me, I think she's the farthest thing from being turned on. In fact, I think she looks pissed. Tell you what, let's punch up the tape and you decide.
Well, they say doctors come in all shapes and sizes.
No, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that does not look like the face of someone who's turned on. If that woman is turned on, she sure has a funny way of showing it. I have to admit, Lockwood is a lot better at flirtatious conversation than Bianca was in episode 2, but he's not as smooth as C.R. Grover in episode 3. All 3 parts were written by Leslie Stevens, but Tony Franciosa's delivery as Nick Bianco just seems a little more belligerent than the other 2. The couple exits the elevator and they head to the office of Dr. Van Owen. After a little bit more flirting with Dr. Trapnell by Lockwood, Van Owen explains that a Mr. Hadley from World Securities delivered the canister that was supposed to contain the lunar specimen D-107. Hadley placed the canister in a locked examination case. After signing for the delivery and letting Hadley out, Dr. Van Owen then noticed that the canister seal was broken. When he opened the canister, it was empty. Now, the only other person with a key to the examination case is Van Owen's assistant, who was at Palo Alto at the time of the lunar sample's delivery, but is currently at Mount Vedir, working on his papers, as he does every Wednesday through Friday. Lockwood wants to talk to the professor, but he's told that there's no phone in the cabin where the man is staying. Now, that's unheard of today, but I can relate. I remember back in the day, we lived on 22 acres way out in the country. Our neighbors, who had even more land than we did, lived so far back off the road that the phone company would not run a wire back that far. So, those people didn't have a phone. But, back to our story. Lockwood suspects that the professor may be being used as a cat's paw. Other than as a title of a Star Trek episode, I was unfamiliar with the term cat's paw. I hadn't paid attention to or followed Lockwood's explanation very closely, so I consulted an online dictionary.
According to collinsdictionary.com, a cat's paw is defined as a person used by another to do dangerous, distasteful, or unlawful work.
Lockwood wants to go see the professor at his cabin. Van Owen says he cannot leave the Palo Alto facility. That means Dr. Trapnell will need to show Lockwood the way to the cabin. Oh darn. She says it's a long drive, several hours. She'll bring coffee. Lockwood suggests chicken soup. So it's a running gag. Lockwood must love driving Mercedes-Benz coupes, because that's what he drives back home in LA, and that's apparently what he got as a rental car in San Francisco. We see a Mercedes creating dust as it climbs the mountain. During a quite good-looking rear projection scene, Trapnell expounds upon Lockwood's cat's paw theory. She mentions a student from Asia Minor named Abbas Mirza, who sticks to the professor like a leech. The folks at Probe Control start looking into the background of Abbas Mirza, while Lockwood and Trapnell continue up the treacherous-looking mountain road in the Mercedes. I would have taken a four-wheel drive vehicle myself. They park the Mercedes by a lake, and the professor evidently drives a Jeep because there's one parked at his cabin. As the two approach the cabin, Probe Control detects a third set of vital signs, and they conclude that the professor is waiting for them. He must have heard them drive up, but he doesn't answer the door.
Do you think he'd hear us coming? we shouldn't go in?
I know he's here. That's the old Jeep he drives.
When they enter the cabin, Trepnell screams when she sees the professor is slumped over a chair. Lockwood confirms that the man is dead. Cameron is concerned because there's still a third set of vital signs present nearby.
There's someone there in the cabin with you.
A man lunges at Lockwood and runs out the door. Lockwood gives chase, and he tackles the man. Not bad for a man who appears to be in his 40s. But the younger man gets the best of Lockwood, and Lockwood is knocked out cold. The man is curious. He leans in to examine Lockwood's scanner. Everyone at Probe Control is still and silent. I thought they were stunned that Lockwood had been knocked out, but why is Cameron whispering? Surely they don't think the guy can hear them.
He's got a knife.
When the man pulls out a knife, Cameron thinks it's the end of his Probe 1.
I thought for a second Lockwood had had it.
But the man merely uses the knife tip to pry the scanner from Lockwood's chain necklace. The man takes the scanner, jumps in the professor's Jeep, and drives off down the mountain. Probe Control identifies the assailant as Abbas Mirza, the student who Dr. Trepnell had mentioned just a bit earlier. Abbas Mirza is played by George Pan.
George Pan was born George Andreas Panoousis in Greece on December 26, 1941. He played the lead in numerous plays on and off Broadway before coming to Hollywood. He played a few minor roles on television in the 1960s through the 1980s. He opened the Pan Andreas Theatre along with Jack Lemmon, Richard Dreyfuss, and his godmother, Ginger Rogers. He more recently started a film production company, GPA Films International. GPA Films International produced the 2017 film The Matadors, starring George Pan Andreas, who also wrote and directed.
When Lockwood regains consciousness, Dr. Trepnell is kneeling beside him. She notices his bloody lip and goes to find something to wipe it off. Lockwood activates his dental contacts to signal Probe Control. Cam tells him that his attacker was Abbas Mirza and that the man now has his scanner. Lockwood taps out some Morse code signals on his dental contacts.
Replay.
Griffin reads the Morse out loud, and Cam determines that Lockwood is suggesting that they use the scanner to track Abbas Mirza.
Track him. Of course. Kuroda, get a three-way fix on it.
Triangulation coming up.
Lockwood and Trepnell start driving down the mountain in Lockwood's rental Mercedes. Mirza parks the Jeep and boards a flight on a Boeing 707 of the Asian Overseas Air Service. We see a montage of various jets taking off while Probe Control tries to determine what flight Abbas Mirza took. Flight 29 took off about 20 minutes ago, according to Cam. The next flight out isn't for 48 hours. Lockwood gets some bad news. The airline can't change its schedule.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lockwood, we can't alter the schedules.
And there's nothing he can do, says the air reservationist, played by Joshua Bryant.
Joshua Bryant was born on July 2, 1940. He studied theater in college. After serving 3 years in the service, he began a career in theater. That led to getting parts in television shows. With nearly 100 acting credits to his name, Joshua Bryant was active from 1968 to 2008. He played minor parts in such shows as Gunsmoke, Mission Impossible, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love American Style, Emergency, Ironside, Kojak, Mannix, Mad Helm, Columbo, Starsky and Hutch, The Love Boat, Little House on the Prairie, Hawaii Five-0, Dallas, The Rockford Files, MASH, Barnaby Jones, Chips, Magnum P.I., Heart to Heart, Saint Elsewhere, Highway to Heaven and Touched by an Angel.
Do you have a plane available? I'm sorry, sir, nothing with that range. Not even the 707? The only equipment we have operational is the 747. I'll take it.
Lockwood wants to charter a 747 for two to Asia Minor.
You want to charter a 747 for two? Crank it up and let's get airborne.
He's taking Dr. Trapnell, of course. While Lockwood and Dr. Trapnell enjoy their flight, Cameron and the team track his scanner. Mirza's flight is about 2 hours ahead of them. Actually, I think that's quite quick for an airline to be able to get a full crew together and prep a 747 for an unscheduled transcontinental flight in just 2 hours. It is a long flight from San Francisco to Istanbul, about 14 hours according to Google. The head stewardess on this long-distance chartered flight is played by Anna Karina.
Did you enjoy the movies? Yes, we did.
All three of them.
Anna Karina appeared in a handful of productions, mostly in the 1970s. She is best known for her parts in The Losers, Fortress of the Dead and Night of the Witches.
They land in Asia Minor, where they're introduced to the World Security's Istanbul branch manager, Deva Siri. I'm sorry if her name triggered any of your Apple devices. I'll try to avoid saying it again, just in case. Anyway, Deva appears to be smitten with Lockwood. She is played by Elijah Gur.
Mr. Lockwood, how do you do? I'm Deva Siri, branch manager, World Securities, Istanbul.
Elijah Gur was born in Palestine on April 1, 1944. As a 12-year-old, she was an extra in the 1956 blockbuster The Ten Commandments. As Miss Israel, she placed in the top 15 in the 1960 Miss Universe pageant. She moved to the U.S. in the 1960s and started a television career. She appeared in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Get Smart, and The Wild Wild West, to name a few. Her last television appearance was in 1973.
This is Dr. Trapnell.
After a little bit of gender confusion concerning Dr. Trapnell,
You are not a man. No, I'm not. Well, in that case, your entry permit will not be accurate. However, Mr. Lockwood's permit is accurate. Quite accurate.
a bribe at customs allows them to enter the country.
These are people of importance. It is our duty to extend our courtesy to tourists who visit our country, in the hopes of their spending their currency.
It's clear as a bell.
A small correction on the entry permit. Wonderful privileges for 3 days. Tourist excitement only.
The branch manager says she has a piece of jewelry for Lockwood. It's his new scanner. A gift from Mom, he says. He signs for the scanner, looks into it, and says, "Thanks, Mom." Then he attaches it to his chain. Kuroda announces that Lockwood's new scanner is activated. They switch back to check on the old scanner, just as Mirza is conveniently asking for directions. What are the odds? They inform Lockwood that he needs to take the old road that leads to the archaeological site. Abbas Mirza enters an archaeological site and meets with his uncle, Colonel Mirza, played by Leo G. Morel.
One last thing.
Leo G. Morel was born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania to Greek immigrants on September 16, 1921. Because he spoke the languages, he was often cast as a Greek or Turkish soldier. He has nearly a dozen credits spanning 2 decades. Leo G. Morel died on July 15, 2015 in Sherman Oaks, California.
They begin speaking in a foreign language, but thankfully the colonel insists that they speak English. He wants to hear what his nephew has learned in America. It also makes it easier for us to follow the conversation. Just saying. Abbas claims that what he has brought will force the world market to support the Colonel's regime. I don't know about that. He opens a bag and shows his uncle the lunar sample diamond cluster. Lockwood and Trapnell follow in their rental vehicle. It looks like something one would take on a safari. What? No Mercedes coupes available for rent in Turkey? Meanwhile, Lockwood is getting close. He stops his vehicle and gets out to go the rest of the way on foot. As he sets out, he tells Dr. Trapnell to stay in the vehicle. Now, I was half expecting her to follow after Lockwood, and I was quite surprised when she did not. Lockwood runs to the cave and enters just before the commercial break. When we come back from the break, we see Lockwood sneaking around among some crates and barrels. When he starts talking to Cam, it occurred to me that his voice should be echoing all around that cavern. So how the soldiers never heard him talking in an enclosed space at a distance of about 40 yards, I'll never know. He also pries open a crate full of dynamite, and I'm sure that couldn't be done without making some noise. I think they missed an opportunity to have Griffin read the crates and tell him what was in each one, by the way. Lockwood intends to create a diversion so he can recover the lunar sample. Abbas Mirza shows his uncle the scanner he's obtained from Lockwood. He raves about the printed circuits.
I captured this from our enemies. These are printed circuits. Switch channels.
This gives Probe Control a good look at the Colonel, but they don't seem to follow up on that. Lockwood sets off his diversion, which creates a lot of smoke. He has Kuroda guide him to Abbas Mirza in the blinding smoke. Lockwood grabs the bag containing the moon rock, but it gets tossed in a scuffle with one of the guards. Lockwood throws the man off and recovers the bag, making a hasty getaway. They make it back to the airport ahead of their pursuers, but they won't have as easy of a time getting through customs. One of the Colonel's men is watching. Lockwood hands over his passport with the customary bribe attached. The agent shakes his head. Lockwood offers a much bigger bribe, and the man still refuses. He wants to see what's in the bag. Lockwood reluctantly hands the bag over. There's a tense moment as the custom agent turns the bag over and he dumps out what appears to be a bunch of broken up glass.
This substance, sir. What is its value?
0. It's called pumice. Comes from volcanoes. In my country, we use it as tooth powder. Go ahead and try it if you'd like. Thank you.
What happened to D-107?
He got kicked around in the spinach and its floors showed.
2,000 carats worth of rotten glass.
God bless it.
Back on the 747, it's a typical Leslie Stevens ending with Lockwood traipsing off with his girl of the week.
Lockwood, something's wrong. Your plane is supposed to return home at once. It seems to be heading for Acapulco.
Lockwood, did you tell the pilot to change course? Lockwood, you cannot toot all over the globe.
In a jumbo jet. A rented jumbo jet. The bill has got to be astronomical. Lockwood, do you copy? You
Turn around right now or we will deduct this from your salary. You will be living on food stamps the rest of your life. Turn around, Lockwood, Lockwood.
Save it, end program.